Ethan Cole had never expected a simple inspection mission to turn into the strangest day of his life. He had boarded the shuttle from Earth with a sense of pride, his mind buzzing with the possibilities of interstellar collaboration. The station they were visiting was neutral territory, a hub where different civilizations met to trade knowledge, technology, and sometimes secrets. Ethan's job as an engineer was straightforward: check the station's maintenance systems, ensure the docking bays were functioning properly, and report any anomalies. He liked routines, the predictability of numbers and circuits, but routines rarely prepared someone for being locked in a small cell with 2 alien women. He remembered the moment clearly. The alarms had blared suddenly, a sharp metallic wail that echoed through the station's corridors. Security personnel had arrived in unison, moving with a precision that felt almost rehearsed. Without a word, they had surrounded him, scanned him, and then, to his confusion, placed him in a small holding cell. Ethan had protested, tried to explain himself, but the guards had ignored him. The door had sealed shut with a hiss, and the world outside disappeared. The cell was small, no larger than a modest room on Earth, but it was clearly designed with care. The walls were smooth and softly glowing, a subtle light that adjusted to the occupants' moods, though Ethan hadn't realized it at first. There was a bench along one side, and a panel that seemed to control temperature and air quality. He had been alone for a few minutes, pacing back and forth, when he first noticed them. At first, he thought he was imagining things. 2 figures were sitting quietly on the bench, seemingly relaxed. Their skin shimmered faintly under the soft light, and their movements were graceful, precise, as if every gesture was measured and meaningful. One of them had pale, silver-toned skin that reflected the light in soft waves. The other's skin was a deep violet, rich and vibrant. Both had eyes larger than human proportions, deep and expressive, and their hair, floating lightly as if underwater, defied gravity. Ethan froze. Hello?" he asked, unsure if speaking aloud would startle them. The silver-skinned one tilted her head, her large eyes studying him carefully. "Hello," she said, her voice melodic but firm. "You are human, yes?"
"Yes," Ethan replied, his mind racing.
"Ethan Cole, engineer from Earth. And, you are..." They glanced at each other briefly, exchanging a subtle glance that seemed to convey a conversation without words. The violet-skinned one spoke, her tone softer, almost amused. "Names are not important, for now. But you must be careful with words. They can carry more weight than you think."
Ethan blinked. "Words?"
I just wanted to know your names. I mean, no offense."
The silver-skinned one gave a small nod, as if approving his honesty. "We understand."
"It is unusual for your kind to be placed in such a space with strangers. But the rules of this station are peculiar." He glanced around, suddenly realizing how small the cell really was. Yet it didn't feel oppressive. There was a warmth in the air, a subtle hum that seemed to respond to the presence of living beings. He could hear their breathing, rhythmic and calm, and for some reason he felt a strange sense of peace despite his predicament. "Okay," he said finally, trying to find his footing. "So, why am I here?" "I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just..."
"You were mistaken," the violet-skinned one interrupted gently.
"Mistakes happen often here, but it is rare for someone from your world to remain calm." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Remain calm. I'm freaking out on the inside." They both tilted their heads slightly, a gesture so alien yet expressive that Ethan found himself chuckling. The silver-skinned one spoke again. "Your species has a peculiar way of hiding emotion. We notice it. It is fascinating." That caught Ethan off guard.
"Fascinating? You mean my panic is fascinating?"
"Not the panic. the violet-skinned one corrected him softly. The way you think before acting, the hesitation. It shows potential. Ethan wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or terrified. Potential for what? He asked cautiously. They didn't answer directly. Instead, they began to move gracefully around the cell, exploring it as if it were a familiar space. Ethan watched them, his curiosity starting to outweigh his anxiety. They handled the walls carefully, touching surfaces and emitting soft hums that resonated with the lighting. It was mesmerizing, like watching dancers perform without music. Is this some kind of test? He asked, half joking. Perhaps, the silver-skinned one replied enigmatically, or perhaps it is simply observation. Observation can teach more than instruction. If this was some sort of misunderstanding, maybe he could learn from them and prove he wasn't a threat. He took a deep breath. Well, observation works for me. I can learn. I'm good at that. The violet-skinned one gave a faint smile, a gesture that softened her otherwise regal presence. We will see. Perhaps there is more to your species than we understood. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Ethan had lost track of time. They didn't speak constantly, but the presence of the two women created a rhythm, a shared silence that was far from uncomfortable. He found himself experimenting, asking questions about their planet, their culture, and even simple things, like how they saw color or measured time. They answered, slowly at first, in careful tones, revealing small pieces of information. Ethan learned that their civilization valued harmony and intelligence, that they approached problems collectively, and that leadership meant guiding through example rather than command. He tried to explain Earth in return, the chaos and beauty of human life, and the idea of individual achievement. At one point, he picked up a small panel that had been left on the bench. Using scraps of material he found in the cell, he began tinkering with it, trying to see if he could improve its efficiency. The princesses, though he did not yet know that was what they were, watched with keen interest.
Your methods are curious, said the silver-skinned one.
You do not follow the obvious path. I guess that's what humans do, Ethan replied with a shrug. Sometimes the obvious path isn't the best.
Or at least it's more boring.
The violet-skinned one's eyes widened slightly. Boring is a concept we seldom consider.
Curiosity, you wield it well. He laughed quietly.
Well, it keeps life interesting. I mean, even in a tiny cell, it's better than staring at walls. For the first time, Ethan realized that the two women were teaching him something, even if unintentionally. Their calm, precise movements, their attention to detail, their ability to communicate with nuance. He could see it as a lesson in patience and observation. And in a strange way, he felt a growing respect for them, though he still didn't know their true identities. As the station's artificial day shifted, the lighting in the cell changed, mimicking a soft sunset. Ethan glanced at the two women. They seemed unaffected by the passage of time, yet he noticed subtle changes in their expressions as the light altered. They were beautiful, yes, but more than that. They were commanding, almost magnetic in their presence. He wondered what it would be like to live in a society that valued intellect and grace so highly. Finally, exhaustion settled in, and Ethan slumped against the wall. He felt a strange mixture of relief and curiosity, knowing that the day had been unusual, but also strangely enriching. The two women moved to their positions on the bench again, sitting quietly and observing him with those large, knowing eyes.
You will stay here for now, said the silver-skinned one softly. But fear is unnecessary.
Your presence is not harmful. Not yet. Ethan nodded, not fully understanding the implications, but comforted by the calm tone. I'll try to remember that, he murmured. As sleep began to overtake him, he reflected on the day. Locked in a cell, he had expected frustration, anxiety, maybe even anger. Instead, he had discovered two remarkable beings, hints of a civilization beyond his imagination, and perhaps a chance to learn something he could never have encountered on Earth. And as he drifted off, he had no idea just how extraordinary these women really were, nor how deeply their paths would intertwine with his in the days to come. In that small cell, with the hum of the station surrounding them, a quiet story of trust, curiosity, and unexpected friendship had begun. And Ethan Cole, Earth engineer, had no idea that he had just stepped into a chapter of history that would change everything. Ethan woke to the soft glow of the cell's lights shifting once again, mimicking the gentle dawn of a distant world. He stretched, feeling the stiffness of sleeping upright on the bench, and realized that being locked in the cell had become less intimidating. Strange, he thought. Yesterday, the fear had been almost suffocating, yet now, with the two alien women nearby, he felt a curious mixture of comfort and excitement. Liara, the silver-skinned one, was already awake, sitting gracefully on the bench with her legs folded beneath her, fingers lightly brushing the glowing wall, as if she were reading its subtle energy. Sirena, the violet-skinned one, stood near the panel, observing the cell's soft hum, her large eyes scanning every corner as if the small space held countless secrets. Ethan blinked and rubbed his eyes. "Good morning," he said cautiously. "Or whatever passes for morning here." Liara tilted her head, a faint smile crossing her features.
"Morning is a concept," she said thoughtfully. "Your kind measures it in hours.
We measure it in cycles of attention and activity."
Sirene's voice followed, soft and lilting.
"You have slept."
"That is sufficient for the beginning of a cycle."
Ethan scratched his head.
"Cycles of attention and activity. Sounds complicated."
"I'll stick to hours for now. My brain isn't ready for alien time yet." The two women exchanged a glance, silent communication that Ethan could not interpret. It was then that he noticed something new. The way they interacted with each other carried a subtle authority, as if one word or gesture could shape the decisions of the other. They weren't just ordinary beings. They were confident, intelligent, and commanding. Ethan couldn't put it into words, but he felt a mixture of awe and curiosity.
"So," Ethan began, trying to sound casual, "what exactly are you two doing here? Just here for the ride, or is there more to it?"
Liara's silver eyes softened. "We are here for observation."
It is part of our duty. But our duties sometimes intersect with your kind in ways that are unexpected. Sirene stepped closer, her voice warm. "We are aware you are not guilty of the misunderstanding. Yet your behavior here is intriguing. You adapt. You learn. You cooperate. It is unusual for humans." Ethan smiled faintly. "Unusual good or unusual bad?"
"Unusual good," Liara said firmly. "You have potential."
"Potential for what?" Ethan asked, curiosity lacing his voice. Sirena looked at him with her large, violet eyes, studying him. Potential for understanding. For connection. For trust across worlds.
Ethan felt a tingle of pride mixed with embarrassment.
He had never imagined that simply being himself in the middle of a mistake he didn't commit could be seen as admirable. Hours passed in a quiet rhythm, punctuated by soft conversation. Ethan asked about their planet, their culture, and the way their civilization approached challenges. They described cities that thrived without conflict, technologies that harmonized with nature, and education that celebrated curiosity and collaboration. Ethan shared stories of Earth, of its chaos, creativity, and human ingenuity. Sometimes they were amused, sometimes thoughtful, and sometimes they tilted their heads as if pondering a puzzle they had never encountered. At one point, Ethan found a panel with buttons and sliders that seemed to control the subtle lighting and temperature of the cell. Curious, he began experimenting, adjusting small settings, seeing how the light shifted and how the air seemed to respond. Liara and Serena watched closely, their expressions unreadable.
You are inventive, Liara said after a while. Your kind uses simple tools to achieve complex results. That is admirable. I guess you have to make do with what you have sometimes. Nothing wrong with a little creativity.
Serena tilted her head, and her expression softened.
Your kind has curiosity. That is rare.
Curiosity is the foundation of growth. The compliment made Ethan feel lighter than he had in days. He had been nervous, scared, and frustrated. But here, in the company of these two remarkable beings, he felt like he could belong. As the station's artificial day continued, small incidents created moments of connection. A slight misalignment in the cell's air panel caused a soft vibration, and Ethan noticed the princesses, or he thought of them as ordinary, fascinating aliens, reacting instinctively. Lyra placed a hand on the panel, humming softly. The vibration stopped. Serena smiled faintly. Ethan realized they were not just beautiful. They were deeply intelligent and intuitive. You two really know your way around this place, he remarked. Liara tilted her head.
We are not unfamiliar with this environment, yet your ability to observe, to test, to adapt, that is noteworthy. Few of your kind would notice the small changes. Hey, someone has to pay attention, Ethan said with a grin. Otherwise everything falls apart. They laughed softly, a sound that was almost musical. For the first time since being locked in the cell, Ethan felt completely at ease. By mid-cycle, Ethan had grown bold enough to ask what he had been curious about since the beginning. Look, I have to ask, why are you so, I don't know, calm? Even knowing we're all stuck in a cell like this? Sirena's violet eyes met his, and she smiled faintly. Calmness is deliberate. Our world values clarity of thought above all. Fear clouds understanding. Panic clouds judgment. Even when situations are uncertain, we must remain clear. Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. Makes sense. I wish Earth could be a little more like that sometimes. Yara's smile was small, almost mysterious. Earth has its own strengths. Strength is found in adaptability, in persistence. We have observed your kind before, in many forms. Sometimes your chaos leads to unexpected solutions. I guess I'm living proof of that, huh? Sirena tilted her head. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are only beginning. Curiosity got the better of him. Beginning what? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Lyra, and the two shared a glance full of unspoken meaning. Ethan felt a shiver of anticipation, wondering what he had stumbled into. Whatever it was beyond anything he had imagined. Time passed in a way that was hard to measure. Conversation, laughter, and silent observation filled the cell. Ethan realized he was learning things he had never been taught: patience, perception, and the quiet power of listening. And the two women, Liara and Serena, seemed to be learning from him as well. They reacted to his ideas, his inventions, and his perspective on Earth life, adapting their own understanding of humans. At one point, Ethan decided to try something daring. Using the scraps he had found in the cell, he fashioned a small device that could detect changes in the cell's energy flow. He held it up proudly. Lyra's eyes widened slightly.
You created this from nothing? Nothing and a little bit of hope, Ethan replied, grinning. I'm good with gadgets.
It's kind of my thing. Serena laughed softly, a musical sound that made Ethan feel lighter. Your resourcefulness is impressive. You are not simply surviving here. You are contributing. That is rare. Ethan felt a surge of pride. Not only had he survived the first day of imprisonment, but he had also earned the respect of beings far more advanced than himself. He wondered how many humans could say that. As the artificial cycle shifted again, Liara and Serena moved closer to him. "Ethan," Lyra said softly, "you must understand something. Being here is not punishment alone."
It is also a lesson. For you.
And for us. "What kind of lesson?" he asked cautiously. "The kind that teaches trust," Serena said. "The kind that teaches connection, and the kind that prepares us for what comes next." Ethan swallowed hard. "What comes next?" They didn't answer directly. Instead, they shared a glance, one that conveyed calmness, authority, and a hint of amusement. Ethan realized then that he had only scratched the surface of who they were. Whatever lay ahead, it would be more extraordinary than anything he had yet imagined. As the cycle ended, Ethan lay back against the wall, exhausted but exhilarated. He thought about the day, the lessons, the laughter, and the tiny inventions he had crafted. He thought about the grace, wisdom, and subtle power of Liara and Serena. And for the first time since being locked in that cell, he felt a sense of anticipation rather than fear. He didn't know it yet, but the two women were more than just fascinating companions. They were royalty, heirs to a civilization far beyond Earth's reach, and they had chosen, deliberately or not, to let him into their circle of observation and understanding. And Ethan, the human engineer who had been so anxious just hours ago, felt a spark of possibility. The cell was no longer just a trap. It was a classroom, a proving ground, and perhaps even the beginning of a story that would change the course of interstellar relations forever. As sleep claimed him again, Ethan smiled faintly, feeling for the first time that being locked up was not the end of his adventure, but the very beginning. The day began like any other in the cell, with soft lights shifting to simulate dawn. Yet Ethan felt a subtle thrill he could not ignore. He had been learning from Liara and Serena, and now, for the first time, he sensed that the situation might change in ways he had not imagined. The station was quiet outside, but inside the cell a new energy hummed, as if the environment itself was aware of the bond forming between the three of them.
"Good morning," he said, trying to sound casual. "Or whatever counts as morning here." Liara's silver eyes sparkled faintly.
"Morning is the moment when awareness begins anew. You are awake."
That is sufficient. Sirena's violet eyes studied him carefully.
"And observant," she added. "You notice."
"You adapt. That is rare." Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a little pride. He had learned that even small gestures or observations mattered more than he realized.
"I guess I'm a quick learner," he said.
"It's either that or go crazy staring at walls all day." The two women exchanged a glance, subtle and almost imperceptible, but it spoke volumes. Ethan had long since realized they communicated not just with words but with expressions, gestures, and small nuances. There was intelligence there that he could hardly measure, yet he felt a growing respect and admiration. Today, however, was different. Ethan noticed a soft vibration under his feet, a subtle pulse that seemed to ripple through the cell. He looked at Lyra and Serena, who were already sensing it, their eyes narrowing slightly. "There is a shift in the station," Lyra said softly. "Something unusual is occurring."
Ethan frowned.
"Unusual? Like a malfunction?" "Not a malfunction," Serena replied. "A situation. One that may allow. Movement. The word sent a shiver of excitement through Ethan. Could it be that they would finally leave the cell?
He tried to steady his voice. "You mean—"
Escape. Ayara shook her head gently. Escape is a human term. We mean opportunity to move freely, but without alerting others. It requires care.
It requires,
Ethan's heart beat faster. This was it. The moment where he could contribute. show his skills, and perhaps even earn the trust of these extraordinary beings. Collaboration sounds good. I can do that. What do we need to do? Sierra now gestured toward the walls, and Ethan realized they were not ordinary walls. They responded to thought and touch, subtle energy flowing through them that could be harnessed.
Observe carefully, she instructed. Notice patterns.
Find openings. Move with intention, not haste. Ethan knelt by the panel he had studied before, examining the controls with a mix of curiosity and determination. The cell's energy seemed to pulse faster as he manipulated the settings, and he noticed a faint hum resonating through the floor. Liara and Serena were beside him, their movements precise, almost dance-like, as they adjusted panels and touched walls in a coordinated rhythm. It's like a puzzle, Ethan whispered, a really complicated, glowing puzzle. Yes, Liara said softly. And every piece responds to intention. Force is meaningless. Observation and patience. Hours passed as they experimented, testing the cell's boundaries. Ethan learned that even a tiny shift in the panel could trigger changes in the walls, opening hidden sections for a moment before sealing again. Liara and Serena guided him, their hands brushing against his lightly to demonstrate subtle gestures. Ethan felt exhilarated. This was more than engineering. It was art, logic, and intuition combined. Finally, after many attempts and careful coordination, a section of the wall shifted slightly, revealing a narrow corridor beyond. Ethan's eyes widened.
We did it!
He whispered, hardly believing it. Serena's smile was faint but warm.
Yes, but patience remains essential.
The station is aware we must move quietly. Ethan nodded, adrenaline surging. The three of them stepped through the narrow passage, careful not to trigger sensors or alarms. The corridor was dimly lit, lined with panels that seemed to respond to movement, opening and closing silently. Every step required thought, every gesture a calculation. Ethan felt alive in a way he had never felt on Earth. Alert, creative, and part of something extraordinary. As they advanced, Ethan asked cautiously, "Do you often move like this? Quietly, with panels and corridors?" Movement is measured. We act with awareness. Not all beings possess such discipline, but you adapt quickly.
That is why we value your presence.
Ethan felt a swell of pride. Well, I'm learning from the best. Serena chuckled softly. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are teaching us something as well. Perspective is valuable. The corridor opened into a larger observation deck, where Ethan could see the expanse of the station and the stars beyond. He froze, marveling at the view. Light from distant suns glittered on metallic surfaces, and the planets below shimmered like jewels. It was breathtaking. Beautiful, Ethan breathed. I never imagined it would be like this. Liara's eyes reflected the stars. Bah.
Beauty is in harmony. Observation allows appreciation. Serena turned to him.
And you, human, notice. That is
important. Not every observer sees what truly matters.
Ethan realized then that the journey through the cell had been more than a challenge. It had been preparation, for observation, for awareness, for understanding. And now, out here, he could see why. Everything around him mattered. Every subtle motion and reaction of the environment. And the two women beside him were living examples of harmony and intelligence in motion. They continued exploring the station, moving through corridors that tested their coordination, their patience, and their attention. Ethan found himself adapting to their rhythm, learning to anticipate gestures, to notice the smallest changes in the walls, and to respond with care. At one point, they reached a section where the floor seemed to shift beneath them. Ethan hesitated. Is this supposed to happen? Lyra smiled faintly. Yes, it is part of the design. It tests awareness.
Do not Rush.
Ethan took a deep breath, stepped forward, and moved with careful attention. The floor adjusted beneath him, responding to his presence, and he felt a thrill of accomplishment. Sirena followed, glancing at him with approval.
This is...
Incredible, Ethan whispered. I never thought a cell could lead to all this. Learning.
Sirena's violet eyes twinkled. Sometimes confinement teaches more than freedom. Observation often requires limits. But now?
You are free, temporarily, to apply what you have learned.
They reached a wide observation deck overlooking the main docking bay. Ethan stopped, marveling at the ships lined up like delicate sculptures, their lights reflecting softly on the metal floor. He turned to the two women.
We made it! We're...
Free. Liara shook her head slightly. Freeze relent. Awareness must remain. You are part of this now. Not as a prisoner, but as a collaborator. Ethan felt a surge of excitement. Collaborator, I like that word. Sirena smiled.
Then let us continue. Together.
They spent the next few hours navigating the station, using their combined intelligence and intuition to move efficiently and quietly. Ethan realized that every decision mattered. One wrong move could trigger alarms, yet the focus was never fear. It was observation, understanding, and collaboration. The two women guided him patiently, correcting small mistakes without criticism, and he learned quickly. At one point, they paused near a large viewport overlooking the galaxy. Ethan leaned against the railing, feeling a sense of wonder and humility. I never imagined.
Life out here could be like this, he said softly. Liara's gaze was thoughtful.
Many of your kind look only at survival. Few notice the beauty of the universe while moving through it. Observation is a gift.
Serena added, and trust.
Collaboration, learning from others.
Ethan nodded slowly, realizing that the past few days had taught him more than he could have anticipated. He had been locked in a cell, confused and scared, yet that confinement had led to connection, understanding, and growth. And now, moving freely with Liara and Serena, he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. They returned to the cell only after several cycles, not because they were trapped, but because the lessons of observation required repetition and reflection. Ethan noticed the subtle changes in the walls, the way the energy of the cell had shifted in response to their exploration. It was no longer merely a prison. It was a classroom, a playground, and a laboratory, all in one. As Ethan lay down for the cycle's rest, he reflected on what had happened. He had learned patience, observation, and collaboration. He had discovered that fear could be replaced with curiosity, that intelligence could be expressed in subtle ways, and that trust could grow in the most unexpected circumstances. And though he did not yet know the full truth about Liara and Sirena, he felt a growing sense of admiration and respect for them. For the first time, being locked in a cell did not feel like confinement. It felt like the beginning of something extraordinary, an adventure of discovery, friendship, and understanding that stretched far beyond the walls of the station. And Ethan Cole, human engineer, knew that the story was far from over. The station was vast, the universe beyond even more so, and with Liara and Serena by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The station hummed with quiet life as Ethan, Lyra, and Sirena made their way through the corridors. The last few cycles of exploration had been exhilarating, yet Ethan felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had learned so much from them, and he trusted them, yet he had no idea what lay ahead. Something in the air suggested that the small lessons of observation, patience, and collaboration were about to culminate into a revelation. They arrived at a large chamber that neither of them had entered before. The room was circular, lined with tall, transparent panels that reflected the stars beyond the station. At the center was a softly glowing platform, intricate symbols etched into its surface.
Ethan could feel a subtle energy radiating from it, something that made the hair on his arms stand on end. Liara turned to him, her silver eyes calm but commanding.
Ethan, it is time. You must understand the truth.
What you have learned and what you will see will shape the way you move forward. Siriana stepped closer, her violet eyes reflecting both warmth and authority. We have withheld our identities to ensure your impartial learning. The lessons we intended could not be taught if you were influenced by titles or status.
Ethan's mind raced.
Lessons, titles. What do you mean? Liara's smile was faint, serene. We are not merely travelers, observers, or companions.
We are heirs to the throne of our world.
Our civilization entrusted us with guidance, diplomacy, and leadership. And now, by your actions, you have earned a place among those who may influence the future of interstellar relations. Ethan froze. Royalty. He had suspected something extraordinary about them, but this revelation surpassed anything he had imagined.
Princess, he whispered, his voice filled with awe.
You're royalty? Sirena nodded gently. Yes.
And though our station has rules that require us to conceal our identities, you have proven worthy of knowing. Ethan felt a mixture of disbelief and excitement. He had been nervous, scared, and curious in that small cell, and now he realized the magnitude of the beings he had shared that time with. They were not only intelligent and graceful, they were leaders, responsible for guiding an entire civilization.
I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I never expected any of this.
I was just trying to survive, learn, and not mess up. Liara's expression softened, and yet that is precisely why we observed you. You acted with curiosity, patience, and integrity. You learned without judgment, contributed without expectation, and adapted without fear. Those qualities are rare and valuable. Ethan exhaled slowly, realizing that the past few days, the confinement, the exploration, the collaboration, had all led to this moment. He had been tested not with threats or danger, but with patience, observation, and trust. And he had passed in ways he had never imagined. Serena gestured toward the platform. It is now time for you to see the broader view, Ethan. A view of our station, our people, and the possibilities of collaboration between your world and ours. Ethan stepped onto the platform cautiously. As he did, the symbols on its surface began to glow more brightly. The walls around them shifted, revealing a panoramic view of the entire station. Ethan could see every corridor, docking bay, and observation deck. Beyond that, the stars stretched endlessly, planets spinning in silent elegance, and distant ships moving like tiny ornaments across the void.
It's breathtaking, he whispered.
I've never seen anything like this. Lyra's voice was calm but firm. Beauty is not only in appearance, Ethan.
It is in harmony, understanding, and intention. Observe carefully. Every movement, every interaction, every decision matters. Ethan nodded, absorbing the lesson. He realized that this was more than just a visual display. It was a teaching tool, a representation of how choices ripple through complex systems. And the two princesses were guiding him through it. Not with force, but with subtle guidance and trust.
Your kind, Serena said, has potential to influence, to learn, and to collaborate.
And yet you must also understand responsibility. Trust is earned through consistency, awareness, and respect. Ethan felt the weight of her words. They weren't just statements. They were lessons about leadership, diplomacy, and the delicate balance of life beyond Earth. He had learned patience, creativity, and observation in the cell. Now he was learning about influence, collaboration, and interstellar responsibility. After several cycles of silent observation, Lyra spoke again. Ethan, it is time to return. But know this, what you have learned here is not confined to these walls. Your understanding, your ingenuity, and your perspective can shape future relations between your people and ours. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand. I promise to remember everything. Sirena's violet eyes softened, and she touched his arm lightly. We trust that you will, and know that trust is a gift we do not give lightly. You have earned it. They moved together through the corridors, returning to the smaller cell, which now felt less like a prison and more like a place of learning and reflection. Ethan noticed subtle changes. The walls glowed slightly warmer, the air seemed more welcoming, and the hum of energy had a soothing rhythm. Sitting on the bench, he looked at Liara and Serena. I still can't believe it, he said quietly. I was locked in here with 2 princesses, and I didn't even know it. Lyra smiled faintly. Understanding often requires perspective. You saw us as we wished to be seen, not as titles or status. That was essential for the lessons to take root. Ah, Sirena added, and now you are prepared to act with awareness, with integrity, and with creativity. You have proven that humans can learn, adapt, and collaborate beyond expectations. Ethan felt a swell of pride and humility. He had never imagined that his curiosity, patience, and small acts of observation would lead to this moment. The princesses had guided him, challenged him, and trusted him in ways he could hardly comprehend. As the station's artificial cycle shifted to night, Ethan realized that he had grown in more ways than he could measure. He had gained knowledge, confidence, and a sense of purpose, and he had formed a bond with 2 extraordinary beings. Princesses, yes, but also teachers, friends, and collaborators. Will the others know? He asked hesitantly. The other humans, I mean. Will they know your royalty? Not yet. The timing must be right. Revealing titles too soon can complicate relations. For now, what matters is trust, understanding, and preparation.
Sirena smiled. You are part of this preparation, Ethan.
Not as a servant, not as a subject, but as an equal observer and participant. Your role is rare and important. Ethan exhaled slowly, absorbing the weight of her words. He had come to the station expecting a routine mission, a check of systems and machinery. Instead, he had been given lessons in patience, observation, collaboration, and trust, and he had been allowed to witness the grace, intelligence, and leadership of beings far beyond anything he had imagined. Hours passed in quiet reflection. Ethan lay on the bench, gazing at the soft glow of the walls and listening to the subtle hum of the station. He felt a sense of completion, yet he also sensed that this was only the beginning. The lessons he had learned would guide him, not just in the station, but in his interactions with other civilizations, other challenges, and other opportunities for understanding. Finally, Liara spoke softly.
Ethan, it is time to rest.
The station continues to observe, but your mind must consolidate what you have learned. Sleep well, knowing that you have earned trust, respect, and a place among those who seek understanding across worlds. Sirena added, tomorrow brings new cycles, and with it, new opportunities. Remember, curiosity, patience, and observation are your greatest tools. Use them wisely.
Ethan closed his eyes, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and wonder. He had entered a cell expecting confinement and fear.
Instead, he discovered friendship, trust, and lessons that transcended species, titles, and worlds. As sleep claimed him, he dreamed not of walls or captivity, but of stars, distant planets, and a future where humans and alien civilizations could collaborate in harmony. And in that dream, Liara and Sirena stood beside him, guiding, observing, and trusting, a reminder that the universe was vast, full of possibility, and waiting for those willing to learn. When he awoke, the station's light cycle had shifted once more. He felt renewed, confident, and ready to face whatever came next. The cell was empty now, the lessons embedded deep within him. He glanced at the doorway, imagining the corridors, observation decks, and stars beyond. And he knew that the adventure was far from over. The princesses had trusted him, taught him, and included him in something extraordinary. Ethan understood in a way he never had before that leadership was not about power. It was about trust, observation, and collaboration, and he was ready to take that lesson back to Earth, to share it, to live it, and to continue learning. And somewhere, beyond the stars, Liara and Serena watched with quiet pride. They had found in Ethan a human worthy of trust, a mind capable of growth, and a heart willing to see beyond fear. In the quiet glow of the station, the bond between their worlds and their people had begun. Ethan smiled. He had been locked in a cell, but he had emerged richer than any freedom could offer, with knowledge, connection, and the promise of endless discovery.